Okay, this is Casablanca. This is actually Michael Curtiz's, I believe, his 125th film. He would go on to do 35 more after this. A lot of the silent films he did, you can't really find anymore. They're one of the 1900s. But it's an established career, and of course, you make enough good movies, you're gonna have some powerhouses just like this one.
Yeah, he had a string there where it was just like hit after hit after hit, but they weren't. With time, they grew to be these like mammoth films that we watch every year. Things like White Christmas, and of course the film we're talking about today.
So we're going to talk about the memorable classic. Some people think it's one of the best movies of all time, and we're going to try to find out why.
Yeah, here's looking at you.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast.
And I'm Kyle from GoatFilmReviews.com. Today we're talking what is considered one of the greatest films ever made in a number of circles, at least one of the best romance films ever made.
Yeah.
Michael Curtiz's Casablanca. And I know Nick is going to be a huge fan of this film. He's probably watched it hundreds of times. I actually just watched it for the first time this week.
This is actually a first time.
This was a first time watch. The wife and I literally got down with we made popcorn and we got our candy out and we celebrated this like we were going to the movies because we haven't been able to go to the movies.
One of the miracles of this movie is Humphrey Bogart playing Rick Blaine. He has a cafe Americana in Casablanca, and throughout the whole movie, he does not ash or spill any drink on his white tuxedo throughout the entire.
I know. I need to party more like Rick because you've got him and you've got our characters from Miami Vice who just never seem to dirty those clothing.
One of the harsh criticisms of Casablanca is it's just overly bombarded with cliches, and Goethe's the classic nomer that a few cliches make it a movie bad, but you put 100 cliches, it's a classic.
Yep.
And this is kind of the epitome that people cite. Is, of course, you have a broken love story, you have Paris as a flashback of a love story, you have the cafe, you have nostalgia, and definitely you can tell the cliches of catchphrases and yeah.
Well, and I feel like it's tough to look back on it being 79 years old, that the film created some of the cliches that we now look at as cliches. It did also have a few that have been kind of around in the time period. But yeah, you kind of notice those elements that make it that classic romantic story. You got the war-torn, surroundings, and you've got our character who's trying to avoid what he perceives as his responsibility in the matter. But at the same time, we talk about this a lot, where it's not really about the story you tell, but it's how you tell it. And this is a very how told story.
So definitely Michael Curtiz's budget was handicapped. He had to shoot this film in a short amount of time. They really didn't know what ending they were going to do as they were filming this, so they're going on the fly. And all of it is shot on Warner Brothers' lot, even though they didn't go to Casablanca. And so you're doing rush, and when you do rush, you think how you can do this fast. And one of the techniques that he uses is noir film techniques. I don't consider this film a noir, but there are some elements of noir. I'm using Venetian blinds as projecting close environments and imprisonments, as well as a lot of backlighting and a trickery of anytime you see the actress Ingmar Bergman is soft lighting to her, where all the other guys have harsh lighting to them.
Yep, and in fact, it looks like they actually specifically lit each eye separately with smaller lights because there's this little bit of rose to each one of them. The cinematography in the film, I would argue that there's no shot in the film that feels like it's a shot. That feels like it's something that's meant for you to admire the shot itself. Yeah. Everything in there is done subtly. And I think the idea of taking a noir influence, no, it's not a noir film, shot like one because of these, the break in these characters. They're conflicted. We got half dark, half light. We got some beautiful lighting scores there. The imprisonment of where they're at in their emotional capacity.
Yeah, it's almost like Casablanca is kind of almost a purgatory that everybody's trying to flee. So it's not really an environment. It's an exotic. It's one of the nice cliches. It's an exotic location, but you don't want to be there.
Yeah, and many enter, few leave. It's got that. It does have a purgatorial kind of feeling to it, where even just life seems to stop. We have people that would perceive themselves as enemies, but this is not a war zone. They're just here, they're existing, and they're all existing too in Rick's club, which I think is a really unique idea. The film, of course, being based on an unproduced play, that it does have very few locations, and we get to see a lot of it just through this club.
And that's something you have to do when you're working on a tight schedule or a small budget, that you have to do quick, and Michael Curtiz is very phenomenal. He's also very militant on his productions, and he has no excuse for flaws. He has no excuse for... So he run this as a very aggressive general And I could tell from you had everybody famous this high pitched Hungarian squeal like you're ruining my picture. So.
Well, and the interesting thing about Curtiz as well is that he doesn't really. I don't think he has a style that's specifically his. It seems like he takes a lot of partnerships with the people that he works with, and he also chooses the style that matches the film he's making. Yeah. I just recently watched White Christmas again, and comparing it to this film, both were actually pretty closely made, I guess I would say, but very different in terms of just not just black and white to color or anything like that, but like the way they're shot, the way they're edited, the way they're lit, the way they're performed. Of course, one's a musical, but it's still like they're very different movies with very different styles.
I think that's why people don't really, outside of addiction to movies, like anybody doesn't really know Michael Curtiz, even though he did 166 movies and he was a big Hollywood staple. Yeah. And he sometimes did 3 movies a year. It's just part of the factory machine.
Well respected amongst the field, but even then he's not really ever the first pick. He wasn't the first pick in this film. They wanted William Wyler, and when he said no, then the producers turned to a friend in Michael Curtiz. Like he was trusted with the films, but I don't know if he was ever raised to that level of a king. Everybody was a first choice. He was a bridesmaid.
And that's certainly the background of Humphrey Bogart, because his career was simply just being a B actor in the Hollywood circuit. Just throw anything at him and see if it works. And then he caught fire with Maltese Falcon, and then he became a leading man. A lot of people were hesitant to think he would be a romantic leading man in this. And so he had a lot of things going against this movie, and a lot of miracles happened to make it a big hit.
Yeah, and I think for me, Bogart... My most recent interaction was I watched Beat the Devil for the first time. I don't think he's very good in the movie. I don't think there's much that's very good in the movie. But I think in Casablanca, you see a different side of him. And even though he didn't think the movie was going to be very good, he was quoted as trying to get out of the production multiple times. It was one of the things he and Ingrid Bergman actually agreed on while making the film, was they both wanted out.
Yeah. Well, when you have a script and don't know what the ending's going to be.
Yeah, but I do feel like he rises to the occasion. Maybe there's a sense of Humphrey Bogart in Rick Blaine. Like he maybe felt a kindred spirit to this character, because it is an amazing performance. And he essentially is playing America. It's December of 1941. Right. He's trying to skirt the responsibility of this global crisis that is heading towards him each day.
Yes.
And he's thrust into it. And I'm not even really sure he makes the decisions that he makes until he is forced to make one. Like, he doesn't have any premeditation as his character arc comes to fruition.
I would say Humphrey Bogart doesn't get a lot of appreciation for his acting, but he really did a phenomenal piece, especially when he's in the bar after hours, after seeing Ingmar Bergman, and he's going to stay there up all night and drink, and he tells Sam to play for him as a barometer if she can stand it. But that slight slivet of him almost completely collapsing, that hesitation of that little... and then still held together, magnificent.
Yeah, he's able to work on his own, but he also has tremendous chemistry with many of the people in the film. And I would say, of course, we all know about the chemistry with Ingrid Bergman. It's lovely. It's one of the best chemistries I've ever seen put to film. But also with the actor who played Sam, being able to actually kind of have this buddy-buddy relationship to them as well. Like they have a trust in each other. But then you also get his interactions with Peter Lorre as Ugarte. I think he has very good chemistry with Peter Lorre and Claude Rains. Like he connects with everyone on this film, and I think he's able to do his stuff alone. Those emotional scenes. But I think his best work is when he's playing off of other people. He's very solid at it.
Paul Henry plays Victor Laszlo, and he's a very famous actor. He's not really the heavy hits of all these people. He's now famous for the exchange of Now Voyager, when he lights up Betty Davis's cigarette and she offers that very climactic scene of him. Also, I want to mention Conrad V and the link between the Joker with Conrad. Conrad V came from Germany. He left Nazi-occupied Germany and to flee to Hollywood. And the funny thing is, when you go to Hollywood, then he's playing Nazis in movies. Yeah. But the funny thing is, Conrad V was now, he plays Caesarion in Cabinet Dr. Caligari, the very famous Gothic horror movie. But he also did a movie called The Man Who Laughs, right? Yeah. The Man Who Laughs, which is a very German expression movie where all of this horrific things happen to this person and he continues to smile. It was the inspiration for the comic book villain, the Joker.
Yep, and I'm sure it had a lot of inspiration in the newest iteration of Joker, too, being a person who can't stop laughing. Yeah. Conrad V, he's playing a Nazi. He's playing, and I think,
but he's so friendly in this.
Yeah, he's that.
That's the like
because he's in this area though where the war isn't happening right now.
Yeah.
Like he's in this area again. He's in purgatory, and there's no fighting really allowed inside the club. There's no interactions really needed. But he's still doing a job. He's very sly. He reminds me of a Hans Landa kind of character from Inglourious Basterds, where he knows when he needs to be sly and when he needs to be sharp. Yeah. And part of that too is I can't imagine being a person like Conrad V escaping the Nazi Germany and then you have to play one. And I think he pulls off a level of humanity that probably comes from his escape.
Yeah.
But also there's this sinister evil to him that's constantly pervading the character. And he never really gets time to shine compared to everybody else, but he's an effective villain.
Claude Rains is in this, and he plays, what the character's name?
So he plays Captain Louis Renault.
He's kind of the policeman of the whole facility. He is kind of the barometer. He's the in-between of Rick's world and the Nazis, and he's kind of like the mediator. He's almost a very evil referee.
Yeah, he's never really playing by anyone's rules but his own, something that I guess is a cliche. But what I really like about his character is he's not a good person for most of the film. He's very focused on himself, his status, how he can rise up, how he can do more. I specifically like the scene where he tries to shut down Rick's club, and he says there's been gambling going on here. Like, here's your winnings, sure. Oh, thank you. Everybody get out. Like he takes his winnings while he's ushering everybody out because he learned gambling was there. I love that he plays all the sides to his best benefit, and that showcases in the choices he makes as the film comes to its climax.
The other thing is Michael Curtiz being creative with a small budget is the introduction of the globe. Just give me a globe, spin it, and we'll show where Casablanca is.
I love how cheap that is. I do love it. It's not a bad a qualm with me, but I love how cheap it is.
But the introduction of something peppered into the story that wasn't part of the script that Michael Curtiz knew then is the young couple that are stuck there, and you get an introduction of them with the plane, and you see him come in plane saying, "Well, hopefully will be us," and the little steps of introduction of peppering that a lot of people now use in their scripts of a side plot.
Yep.
That Michael Curtiz knew that had to be in this movie to give a sense of broader spectrum of characters.
And with that kind of comes with perhaps my only true criticism of the film. And it's not really a criticism, more of a nitpick, that it definitely, that first 10 minutes of the film as they're setting up all the characters before we get to Rick's club, I don't feel like it works on its first viewing as well as it does on the second, because there's a lot of setup in that sequence that feels like it's wasting time. On a second viewing, it's different. I watched the film all the way through once, and then the wife went to bed, and I watched it again last night because didn't have anything else going on. But I think that the second time through, that scene with there's the younger guy, the fast talking guy talking to the couple about what's going on. There's the shooting that happens in the town square, and then there's also the introduction of that couple that all those characters will become important to the plot. It's just kind of a little bit random at the beginning, so you're kind of looking for where those puzzle pieces fit, and I think as the film works on, second viewing way better than the first in terms of that, and I think that's one of the reasons why those elements are used more often today, because we do have a rewatch society. As opposed to 1942 when Casablanca was expected to come to film theaters and then leave.
There was certainly never really a sequel to this movie. A lot of people attempted to make sequels, so it never really passed. There have been very different variations, remakes that happened to be on television. I know 55, they made a remake for TV. And there was a very famous one that happened in 1983 called Casablanca, which is kind of just a remake. That was on strictly for TV movie that was very popular. I remember as a kid, everybody talking about this is very popular, and Scatman Crothers is playing the Sam role. And, a lot of people that are famous on TV were in this TV movie, and it looks very like a soft 70s. I don't think if you know early 80s was still part of the 70s looking thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't look 80s at all. It looks like a very late 70s soft kind of a film.
Yeah, there's that time period. It seems like at the end of each decade, where at the beginning of the next, where you're not really sure where we're placed in there. And I think we should do an entire month of all the Casablanca TV movies. I really do. In fact, we should talk the Madonna attempted remake with her and Ashton Kutcher that never got off the ground. That would have been awful. For me, watching this film, both times I saw it now, there was one scene in particular that moved me more than I expected it to. And it was what I called the song off, but I guess they also refer to it as the Duel of the Anthems, where the Germans are singing
the rival band.
I didn't really know where that scene was going to go, and it's one that if you don't pull it off right, could be really stupid and hokey and just very unsuccessful. But that's where you get someone like Paul Henreid, who's playing to his strengths of he's the straight man in the movie. He is. And whether or not he liked that about his character remains to be seen. But when he showed up to set to do that, he played that scene as realistically as possible, and it took all the hokum out of it.
Yeah. Well, you have to shoot it very well, and you do broad, wide, and you cut intimate with personality, and you cut wide. So, even with something like that, you have to do editing very carefully. And that brings up another point. This is actually editing saved this movie.
Oh, yeah. It's a very fine-tuned film in that there's not a single bit of fat on it. No. Everything is important meat that is just being given to us on a silver platter. Because I think that about little lines, there's tiny little lines in the film that you don't feel like they're going to matter much. Right. Things like when Rick is with his girlfriend at the beginning, the one that he's kind of been on.
Yeah, I don't plan that far ahead.
I don't plan that far ahead. He had been planning that far ahead in his flashback. He had made plans for him and Ilsa that did not go well. And that's why it carries in. I didn't think that line was going to mean anything. And it recurred back to me as we went to our flashback, and I began to put together that emotional punch of she was his whole life that just disappeared, and he was broken because of it.
That's one of the nice things about it. Every character has a contradiction to themselves. Rick Blaine is kind of this hard-moral person, but he's very soft. Ingmar Bergman's Elsa, she loves Victor, but she kind of is, and Claude Rains' character, he's the police, but he's not really giving a crap what anybody else does for himself. Yeah. So
not worried about
everybody's character has a contradiction that needs to be presented well, and that makes a complex theme to this without showing very much.
Yeah, I specifically going back to Rick's relationship with Sam, being that Sam's not even willing to take a higher paying job elsewhere because he feels like this is
the devotion.
He jokes, I wouldn't have any time to spend that extra money, but that there's more to it than that. And I think that's kind of a nice thing. Again, it shows in that sequence where they're conversing. He's like, we'll leave, we'll go driving, we'll go fishing, we'll go party for the weekend and come back when she's gone. Sam is willing to give a lot.
Yeah, he's the best wingman ever, man.
Yeah.
One of the nice techniques in Micro TT, I think they spent a week trying to get this right. The letter with the rain falling on it, just perfect enough that you can read it.
I know. I was concerned that I was going to pause it because I was thinking, they're going to cut away, and I'm trying to put this together, and it's the perfect length. The rain drops just enough where it doesn't discolor your ability to read it, but it's there. And I definitely feel like it influenced the Back to the Future Part 2 scene where Marty gets the letter.
Oh, Marty, yeah. Now that you mention it, yes, yeah. But that's hard to do.
It's very hard to do because it's, again, you could overdo it, you could underdo it. I would imagine it took a couple of shots of it, That seemed like a Kubrickian amount of takes, if you ask me.
I've heard many times from different people that it took many takes to the point where people are trying to give up on Micro TTs. It's no, you're going to have to do this. This is a pivotal point of the movie, and of course it's raining. And I love that. Of course it's raining.
So, one other thing about that I think is great is I feel like that scene does evoke that Back to the Future Part 2 homage later on. The wife pointed this out to me as we're watching, and I'm sure I've heard this before, but Rick's Club has to have been an inspiration for the cantina in Star Wars. There's so much placement. I'm sure I've read it before, but like when she asked me, she was like, "This is the basis for the cantina." I was like, "Was it?" Because it does feel like it's really well placed out.
It's one of the few movies where the location, right? Everybody goes there, right?
And the location is almost a character on its own.
Yeah.
I just overall,
it's a foreign location at Casablanca. Then you're inviting this place where it's America, where you can be with anything you want.
Yeah,
you're selling an exotic location in an exotic location. I love the contradictions.
It's a gorgeous place, and no one wants to be there. Everyone's a refugee. Everyone's trying to get home.
Yeah. And
I would even say Claude Rains' character doesn't really want to be there.
No, he certainly doesn't.
I'm not sure if he wants to be with the Nazis. I'm not sure if he wants to be with somebody else, but he's kind of trying to decide. Yeah. Overall, this was a tremendous film. You always worry when you watch something that people call a best of all time.
No, yeah, right, yeah.
That you're going to overdo it. And thankfully, with a film like Citizen Kane, I felt like I reached it before it got overblown for me. And I feel like that was the same thing here, where like I went into it, I tried to actually hamper my expectations, and it still exceeded my expectations. I think it's a very well done film across the board. Probably even if it's not in my top 10 of all time, I do feel like it's worthy of that, top 10 greatest films.
No,
of
I
all
think
time.
a lot of people who on their personal list won't put it on there, but understand academically or scholarly.
Well, and Roger Ebert actually said that when compared to other films that are considered the greatest of all time, things like Citizen Kane, things like A Vertigo or Rear Window or Lawrence of Arabia, is that this is probably the most like palatable of films, like because it is easy to grasp. Like it's a simple movie.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other films that are considered the greatest of all time. They might be something that kind of clings or needs to be grasped or needs to be like unwrapped like a present. This thing is right out there for you. And I think it's probably on more top 10 lists than the other films.
I always use the quote, a good movie can be memorable or unforgettable, and great movies are both. And this is a great movie. It's memorable and very unforgettable. You will remember that you see this movie.
Yep.
You will never forget it.
Yep.
And of course, Roger Ebert, his famous quote is, great movies seem like new even after you watch them.
So would you consider this, I guess, in your top 10 of all time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of place it in there. I think of it, it's tough for me to even pick 10, like ever. And when people ask me for even a favorite, I can't. It always changes. But I would definitely say, for me, it's a top 10 romance film of all time. I would place it on that list quite easily. It's easier for me to break it down by genre. Top 10 romance film of all time. Not sure if it takes my top spot from When Harry Met Sally, but definitely.
I love noirs, and this is not a noir movie, but it has such elements and such little borrowing from noir.
I think you like noir style
Yeah.
more so than just the substance. I mean, you definitely love noir films, but I think knowing you as long as I have now, you like the style of noir when it's placed even in other film genres. You just like that general look, so I can appreciate that. But we both seem to love the movie. What do you think about it? This is our last episode of the season 2, so we're hoping to get your comments on Casablanca. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and pause. I'm pretty sure it's on HBO Max. Go watch it after you watch Wonder Woman again, and then come back.
That's the best thing about this is, even though it's a great movie, there are some things that you can point out that are major errors.
Well, and I think
there's some harsh criticism.
It does work better on a second viewing. It works even better, I'm sure, on a third one, and I'm sure it just ages like a fine wine with a person who's watched it. But we want to hear kind of what you think about the movie. Do you have any flaws with it? The film is very old, and it's considered the greatest film of all time. But if you haven't seen it in your lifetime, you may not agree with us that it deserves that moniker. We want to hear your thoughts on it. Go ahead and comment down below with your thoughts on the film there. If you guys are interested in checking out the Patreon,
please do.
Patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. Check out the different tiers that are available there. You guys get to help pick us some of the different films we're going to talk about in Season 3, which is coming very soon for Kyle and Nick on Film. If you can't give monetarily for that, help us out in other ways. You can subscribe. You can like this video. It takes 2 seconds. Trust me, we tried. And then you can also go ahead and share this on your various social media accounts as well. Get the conversation going, because we really love talking films with each other. We really love talking films with people that don't like talking movies. It's much more fun with people like you.
Yep. So, here's to you.
Yep.